The black mail-order bride was a virgin until the mountain man stumbled through her cabin door, blood trailing from his shoulder as thunder shook the wilderness around them. The townsfolk had whispered she'd be nothing but a broodmare for the rancher who'd bought her passage west, destined to fade into the background of frontier life like so many desperate women before her. They saw weakness where strength lived, assuming her silence meant submission. But this wounded stranger fleeing through the storm carries secrets that could destroy the very men who control her fate. His past holds the key to a conspiracy that reaches from the mines to the courthouse, one that has already claimed lives to stay buried. The corrupt alliance ruling their territory will kill to protect their stolen fortune, and helping him means she'll become their next target. Will she risk everything to shelter this dangerous man, or send him back into the storm to save herself? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The stagecoach wheels ground to a halt in the dusty main street of Cedar Ridge, Colorado territory. Lucinda Mayfield stepped down, clutching her worn leather satchel and a faded photograph of Ezekiel Morrison, the rancher who had promised her a new life through carefully worded letters. The townspeople gathered like vultures. Their eyes swept over her dark skin with barely concealed disdain. Whispered comments floated through the air about Morrison's peculiar choice and her obvious desperation. A woman in a blue bonnet shook her head slowly. A man in overalls spat into the dirt. Sheriff Halbert Vaughn approached with measured steps, his badge catching the afternoon sun. His smile never reached his eyes as he delivered the news that Morrison had been delayed by cattle business. 2 weeks at minimum. He offered temporary lodging at the boarding house with the tone of someone doing charity work. Mrs. Kellerman, the boarding house owner, accepted Lucinda with the enthusiasm of someone handling spoiled meat. She provided a small room on the second floor, but made it clear this arrangement was temporary. Very temporary. The other guests avoided eye contact during meals, leaving Lucinda to eat alone at a corner table. The town revealed its nature quickly. Cedar Ridge thrived on assumptions and gossip. Lucinda represented everything they understood about desperate women seeking refuge in mail-order marriages. She would serve her purpose until her usefulness expired, then fade into the background like so many before her. But Lucinda carried secrets the townspeople could never imagine. Her journey from Baltimore had begun with her father's death and the crushing debts that followed. An arranged marriage to a cruel merchant had been her family's solution. The advertisement from Morrison had offered escape, not desperation. She had survived by reading people, cataloging their expressions and voices to predict their intentions. This skill had kept her alive through her father's volatile moods and protected her from creditors' deceptions. Baltimore society had dismissed it as feminine intuition, but Lucinda knew better. Her second day in Cedar Ridge brought disturbing observations. Homesteaders left town suddenly, abandoning their claims without explanation. Land documents went missing from the territorial office. The sheriff's patrols increased, always searching for someone or something. Morrison's letters arrived daily, each one more controlling than the last. He demanded immediate marriage upon his return. His words carried an edge that reminded Lucinda of the merchant she had fled. The promised partnership seemed to be transforming into ownership. Ruth Abernathy, the town seamstress, watched from her shop window with knowing eyes. She recognized something familiar in Lucinda's careful movements and guarded expressions. Another woman navigating dangerous waters. Strange incidents multiplied around town. A homesteader named Williams left his successful farm overnight, claiming sudden illness in his family back east. The territorial office reported a break-in, though nothing appeared stolen. Conversations stopped abruptly when Lucinda approached. The pieces formed a pattern that troubled her analytical mind. Too many coincidences. Too many convenient explanations. Too many people in positions of power showing no surprise at unusual events. Storm clouds gathered on her third evening in Cedar Ridge. The wind howled through the boarding house walls as rain hammered the windows. Mrs. Kellerman retired early, complaining about the weather affecting her joints. The other guests huddled in the common room, leaving Lucinda alone with her growing unease. The storm intensified after midnight. Lightning illuminated her small room in brief, stark flashes. Thunder shook the building's foundation. Cedar Ridge had not seen weather this violent in years, according to the conversations she had overheard. A sound at her window broke through the storm's fury. Not wind or rain, but something deliberate, a tapping that followed a pattern. Lucinda approached the glass cautiously, her heart racing as another flash of lightning revealed a figure outside. A man clung to the building's exterior, blood staining his shirt. His dark hair was plastered to his head by rain. His eyes held desperation mixed with intelligence. He was not some random drifter seeking easy shelter. The tapping came again, more urgent now. He spoke through the glass, his voice barely audible above the storm. He needed help. He was hurt. The sheriff was hunting him for crimes he did not commit. Lucinda's mind raced through possibilities and consequences. Helping him would violate every social rule governing her precarious position in Cedar Ridge. Mrs. Kellerman would report her misconduct immediately. Morrison would certainly abandon their arrangement. Her chance at independence would vanish, but letting him die outside her window violated something deeper than social conventions. Her analytical skills read truth in his desperate eyes and genuine pain in his careful movements. Whatever he had done or been accused of doing, he was not the real threat in Cedar Ridge. The storm raged around them, nature itself demanding a decision. The wounded man pressed his hand against the glass, leaving a bloody print. His strength was failing. In minutes, he would fall to the ground below. Lucinda's hand moved toward the window latch. Her future hung in the balance between compassion and survival, between the safe path she had carefully planned and the dangerous unknown that beckoned from the storm. Lucinda's fingers found the window latch. The metal was cold against her skin as she made her choice. The wounded man tumbled through the opening, bringing rain and desperation into her small room. Blood soaked through his shirt from a shoulder wound. His breathing came in short, controlled bursts that spoke of training and discipline. This was no ordinary drifter. His hands showed calluses from both manual labor and something more precise. His eyes darted to the door, calculating escape routes even while injured. She pressed a towel against his wound, noting how he positioned himself to watch both the window and door simultaneously. His muscles tensed at her touch, but he did not pull away. Trust and suspicion warred in his expression. The storm continued to rage outside, masking any sounds from within. Lucinda worked quickly, cleaning the wound with water from her wash basin. The injury was clean, recent, and deliberate. Someone had shot him while he was running. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, learned from tending her father during his final illness. But her mind worked faster, cataloging details that others would miss. The man's boots were expensive but worn thin. His shirt was quality cotton, carefully mended. He carried himself like someone accustomed to authority, but currently stripped of it. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried education and exhaustion in equal measure. He thanked her for the shelter. He asked for nothing more than a few hours to recover. He would leave before dawn brought danger to her door. But Lucinda saw deeper truths in his manner. The way his eyes tracked movements suggested law enforcement training. His careful speech patterns indicated someone accustomed to weighing words for their legal implications. Most telling was his assumption that helping him would bring her danger, not social disapproval. She began to speak, testing theories with careful questions. Where had he come from tonight? What had driven him into the storm? Who was hunting him with such determination? His responses revealed layers of deception and truth. He claimed to be a prospector who had stumbled onto someone else's claim. The owners had not appreciated his presence. The sheriff naturally sided with established residents over wandering strangers. Lucinda's analytical mind dissected each word. His story contained convenient gaps and rehearsed explanations, but underneath the deception lay genuine fear and legitimate anger. Someone was indeed hunting him, and that someone had significant power in Cedar Ridge. She pressed deeper, watching his micro-expressions change with each question. A slight tightening around his eyes when she mentioned Sheriff Vaughn. A barely perceptible pause when she asked about the territorial office. His hands clenched unconsciously at the mention of missing homesteaders. The breakthrough came when she described the strange incidents she had observed. His careful composure cracked for just an instant, revealing recognition and fury. He knew about the disappearing homesteaders. He understood the significance of missing land documents. This was personal for him. Her childhood in Baltimore had taught her to read dangerous men. Her father's creditors had been masters of intimidation and false charm. She had learned to catalog the tiny signals that preceded violence or deception. This man carried neither. His danger came from what he knew, not what he intended. The realization struck her like lightning. He was not a criminal fleeing justice. He was an investigator seeking it. Her direct question shattered his pretense completely. She asked if he worked for the territorial government. His shocked silence confirmed her theory. She pressed further, guessing about corruption and cover-ups. His expressions validated each assumption. Finally, he abandoned deception entirely. Jonas Carver had indeed worked for the territorial authorities, a Pinkerton detective investigating land fraud throughout Colorado. The corruption in Cedar Ridge ran deeper than anyone imagined, reaching from the mines to the courthouse. Sheriff Vaughn was not hunting him for claim jumping. The sheriff wanted him dead before he could report his findings to federal authorities. The missing homesteaders had not left voluntarily. They had discovered something that threatened powerful men with significant investments. Jonas studied Lucinda with new appreciation. Few people possessed the analytical skills to unravel his cover story so completely. Her questions had been precise and strategic. Her observations revealed an understanding of human nature that rivaled his professional training. He asked about her background, curious about skills that seemed wasted on frontier marriage. Her story of survival in Baltimore impressed him. Reading people to avoid her father's violence and creditors' schemes had honed abilities that most investigators took years to develop. The conversation shifted as Jonas recognized her potential value. She possessed something he desperately needed: social access to Cedar Ridge's power structure. As Morrison's intended bride, she could attend gatherings and observe conversations that would never happen in front of a suspected Pinkerton agent. Lucinda felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking together. Morrison's controlling letters took on new significance. The rancher was not simply demanding a submissive wife. He was positioning himself to control someone who might accidentally discover inconvenient truths. Her analytical mind raced through implications. If Jonas was correct about the scope of corruption, then her marriage to Morrison would place her at the center of criminal conspiracy. Her careful escape from Baltimore's dangers had delivered her directly into something far worse. But it also presented an opportunity that neither had anticipated. Her position as an outsider seeking acceptance made her nearly invisible to the conspirators. They would speak freely around someone they considered powerless and temporary. Jonas proposed an alliance that would transform her from victim to investigator. Her social access combined with his professional knowledge could expose the entire network. The partnership would be dangerous, but it offered something her marriage never could: the chance to control her own destiny. The partnership began before dawn broke over Cedar Ridge. Jonas slipped back into the storm, while Lucinda prepared for her new role as unwitting spy. The boarding house remained quiet as she planned her approach to the town's social circles. Mrs. Kellerman's attitude shifted dramatically when word spread about Lucinda's eagerness to contribute to community events. The church ladies welcomed her assistance with their weekly gatherings. The merchant wives included her in their afternoon discussions about territorial politics. Lucinda's analytical abilities flourished in these social settings. She cataloged conversations with precision, noting who spoke freely about land sales and who changed subjects when certain names arose. The patterns revealed themselves quickly to her trained observations. Garrett Blackwood dominated most discussions, despite not attending the gatherings himself. The mine owner's influence reached every conversation about Cedar Ridge's future. His investments shaped decisions about railroad routes and territorial development. His opinions carried weight that seemed disproportionate to his official position. Sheriff Vaughn appeared frequently during these social events, always with convenient reasons for his presence. He checked on security for church functions. He investigated reports of suspicious activity near gathering locations. His timing allowed him to monitor conversations without seeming intrusive. Morrison's name surfaced regularly in ways that troubled Lucinda's analytical mind. The rancher owned property far beyond what cattle operations typically required. His business partnerships extended into mining and territorial development. His delayed return seemed carefully timed to avoid certain political discussions. The breakthrough came during a church planning meeting for the annual harvest celebration. Mrs. Blackwood mentioned her husband's concern about territorial inspectors visiting neighboring counties. Her casual comment about destroyed records and relocated claims revealed the scope of the conspiracy. Lucinda's questions appeared innocent, but drew out crucial details. Which counties had been affected? How had the local authorities responded? What measures were being taken to prevent similar problems in Cedar Ridge? The responses painted a picture of systematic fraud extending across multiple territories. Land records disappeared before inspections. Legitimate homesteaders vanished during investigations. Federal representatives met with convenient accidents on remote mountain roads. Jonas received these intelligence reports during carefully arranged meetings in Ruth Abernathy's seamstress shop. The three conspirators had built a network that could eliminate threats to their operation with ruthless efficiency. Anyone who discovered their scheme faced immediate and permanent removal. Ruth's assistance proved invaluable beyond providing meeting space. The seamstress knew every family's secrets and financial troubles. Her observations revealed which homesteaders had been pressured to sell and which had simply disappeared. Her quiet network of women provided information that men would never share publicly. Lucinda recognized the signs of Ruth's dangerous situation through careful observation. The seamstress flinched at sudden sounds. Her movements carried the careful efficiency of someone avoiding attention. Her explanations for various injuries followed patterns that Lucinda remembered from Baltimore's more desperate households. The intervention required delicate handling. Lucinda used her growing social connections to arrange alternative housing for Ruth through the church ladies' charity network. The seamstress's escape from her abusive situation strengthened their investigative alliance while saving a life. Jonas taught Lucinda formal surveillance techniques during their covert meetings: document copying, conversation recording, evidence preservation. Her natural analytical abilities combined with professional training created formidable investigative skills. But Lucinda's contributions went beyond intelligence gathering. Her understanding of social dynamics helped Jonas navigate relationships that had always confused him. She identified allies among the townspeople and predicted which approaches would succeed with different personality types. Their partnership deepened beyond professional necessity. Jonas respected her insights and valued her courage. Lucinda appreciated his validation of abilities that society had dismissed as worthless. Neither had expected to find intellectual equality in Cedar Ridge's dangerous circumstances. Morrison's unexpected return shattered their careful investigation timeline. The rancher arrived 3 days early, demanding immediate marriage and expressing suspicion about Lucinda's changed behavior during his absence. His controlling nature had intensified rather than mellowed. Sheriff Vaughn's increased patrols around the boarding house suggested growing awareness of potential threats. His questions about Lucinda's activities carried subtle menace beneath polite concern. The net was tightening around their investigation. The corrupt alliance accelerated their land-grabbing operations with alarming speed. Homesteader families received final notices to vacate properties they legally owned. Territorial development contracts were signed before public comment periods expired. Federal inspection schedules were mysteriously altered to avoid Cedar Ridge entirely. Jonas's identity remained secret, but his continued presence in the area drew dangerous attention. Sheriff Vaughn organized hunting parties to search for the mysterious stranger who had been spotted near various homesteads. The description matched Jonas perfectly. Lucinda found herself trapped between Morrison's demands for immediate compliance and Jonas's need for continued intelligence support. The rancher's controlling behavior had escalated to barely concealed threats about her reputation and future prospects. The stakes multiplied when Ruth discovered documents revealing the final phase of the conspiracy. Garrett Blackwood's mining operation had identified massive silver deposits beneath properties currently owned by honest homesteaders. The 3 conspirators planned to complete their land acquisition within days. Jonas realized his investigation time had expired. Federal authorities needed immediate notification about the conspiracy's scope and timeline. But leaving Cedar Ridge now meant abandoning the homesteaders to certain destruction and Lucinda to dangerous retaliation. The decision point arrived with Sheriff Vaughn's announcement of increased security measures to protect the community from dangerous outsiders. His description of the wanted fugitive removed any doubt about his target. Jonas faced immediate arrest if discovered. Morrison's ultimatum to Lucinda eliminated her remaining options: marriage within 24 hours or public exposure of her improper conduct during his absence. A reputation and future would be destroyed either way. The trap had closed around both investigators with brutal efficiency. Sheriff Vaughn's morning announcement echoed through Cedar Ridge's main street. A dangerous fugitive was hiding among them. A former Pinkerton agent named Jonas Carver, wanted for theft and assault. The reward for his capture would be substantial. Lucinda heard the proclamation from her boarding house window. Her blood turned cold as Vaughn described Jonas with perfect accuracy. Height, build, distinguishing scars. Someone had provided detailed intelligence about their secret ally. Morrison appeared at the boarding house within the hour. His smile carried no warmth as he informed Lucinda of their wedding scheduled for the following morning. No discussion, no negotiation. The arrangements had been finalized during his absence. The rancher's eyes held a calculating coldness that reminded Lucinda of Baltimore's most dangerous creditors. Men who smiled while planning violence. Men who spoke of partnership while preparing betrayal. Morrison had never intended a genuine marriage. Mrs. Kellerman bustled around the boarding house with unusual energy. The wedding would bring prestige to her establishment. Important territorial officials would attend the ceremony. Sheriff Vaughn himself would provide security for such a significant social event. Lucinda's analytical mind processed the implications with growing horror. The wedding was not a celebration, but a trap. Morrison needed legal control over her activities and any evidence she might have gathered. Marriage would give him authority over her testimony and possessions. Jonas received the news through Ruth's network of informants. The seamstress reported increased patrols around the boarding house and church. Escape routes were being systematically eliminated. The noose was tightening with professional precision. The Pinkerton agent made his choice with characteristic decisiveness. Staying meant certain capture and probable death. His investigation notes were hidden with Ruth, ready for transmission to federal authorities. Lucinda would have to survive without his protection. Their final meeting took place in Ruth's back room as dawn approached. Jonas pressed a small derringer into Lucinda's hands, along with detailed instructions for contacting territorial marshals. His eyes held regret and admiration in equal measure. But Lucinda's mind was already working beyond Jonas's escape plan. Her analytical abilities had identified patterns in the conspirators' behavior that revealed their next moves. They would not simply eliminate Jonas and control her through marriage. They planned to tie up all loose ends permanently. The homesteaders would face immediate eviction once the wedding ceremony established Morrison's legal authority. Ruth would disappear due to her knowledge of their meetings. Anyone who had shown Lucinda friendship or support would face retaliation. The conspiracy required complete elimination of witnesses. Sheriff Vaughn's search parties spread across the territory with unprecedented coordination. Professional trackers accompanied his deputies. Communication networks relayed sightings instantly across multiple counties. This was not local law enforcement, but a military-style operation. Morrison's controlling behavior intensified as the wedding approached. He dictated Lucinda's clothing choices and social interactions. He monitored her conversations with other women. His possessiveness revealed the depths of his need to control every aspect of her existence. The rancher's associates visited the boarding house frequently, discussing territorial development with barely concealed excitement. Garrett Blackwood's mining surveys had confirmed massive silver deposits beneath the homesteader properties. The profit potential justified any necessary actions to secure the claims. Lucinda realized the true scope of their criminal enterprise during these conversations. The conspiracy extended beyond Cedar Ridge to encompass multiple territories and federal contracts. Railroad routes, mining rights, and territorial boundaries were being manipulated to concentrate wealth among a select group of conspirators. Her wedding represented more than personal control. It symbolized the conspiracy's complete dominance over Cedar Ridge's future. No one would dare challenge men powerful enough to manipulate territorial law and federal oversight. But Lucinda's analytical abilities revealed weaknesses in their seemingly perfect plan. The conspirators' arrogance made them careless about discussions in front of someone they considered powerless. Their greed created tensions within their alliance. Their timeline pressures forced mistakes that careful investigation could exploit. Ruth's network provided crucial intelligence about the conspiracy's final timeline. The territorial inspector scheduled to visit Cedar Ridge had been reassigned to investigate problems elsewhere. Federal oversight would be suspended for at least 6 months. The conspirators had a free hand to complete their operation. Jonas's escape attempt failed before it began. Sheriff Vaughn's trackers surrounded his hiding place in the abandoned mine shaft. The Pinkerton agent faced capture or death in a shootout that would eliminate him as a witness forever. The news reached Lucinda through Ruth's desperate message. Jonas was trapped, with no escape routes available. Vaughn intended to claim he was killed while resisting arrest. The conspiracy's most dangerous threat would disappear without federal investigation. Morrison's satisfaction was evident as he discussed the successful manhunt. The dangerous fugitive would trouble Cedar Ridge no longer. Legitimate business interests could proceed without interference from federal agents and territorial inspectors. Lucinda faced the complete collapse of everything she had worked to achieve. Jonas would die without exposing the conspiracy. The homesteaders would lose their properties to fraudulent claims. Her marriage would trap her within a criminal organization that controlled an entire territory. But her analytical mind continued processing information with cold precision. The conspirators believed they had eliminated all threats to their operation. Their confidence would make them vulnerable to attacks they could not anticipate. Someone they considered completely powerless might accomplish what a trained Pinkerton agent could not. The wedding ceremony would bring all the conspirators together in one location. Territorial officials would attend, providing legitimate authority figures to witness evidence presentation. The church setting would offer moral authority to support accusations against corrupt local leadership. Lucinda made her decision with the same analytical precision that had guided her survival in Baltimore. She would not flee or submit to Morrison's control. She would transform her wedding into the conspirators' exposure and downfall. The trap they had set for her would become their own destruction. The wedding preparations continued as Lucinda's mind raced through desperate calculations. Ruth's network operated with quiet efficiency, spreading carefully worded messages to trusted allies throughout the territory. The seamstress understood the stakes without needing detailed explanations. Mrs. Kellerman fussed over ceremony details, while Lucinda appeared to submit to Morrison's demands. The boarding house owner saw only a frightened bride accepting her fate. She missed the analytical precision behind Lucinda's careful questions about guest attendance and seating arrangements. Morrison's confidence grew with each passing hour. His bride showed proper deference to his authority. His business associates praised his choice of a woman who understood her place in territorial society. The wedding would cement his social position, while securing legal control over potential evidence. But Lucinda's apparent submission masked frantic investigation into the conspiracy's deepest secrets. Her questions about Morrison's business partnerships drew out crucial details about land acquisition timelines. His casual comments about railroad development revealed the scope of their territorial manipulation. The breakthrough came when Morrison discussed his father's mining claims during their final pre-wedding dinner. His proud recollections of inherited wealth contained dates and locations that made no sense with public records. The rancher was not simply participating in land fraud, he was built on it. Lucinda's analytical mind processed the implications with growing excitement. Morrison's entire fortune derived from fraudulent claims established decades earlier. His father had not discovered mineral deposits through legitimate prospecting. The family wealth came from systematic theft of other men's discoveries and claims. The pattern extended beyond Morrison's inheritance to encompass the entire conspiracy. Garrett Blackwood's mining empire was built on similar fraudulent foundations. Sheriff Vaughn's authority protected operations that had enriched his family for generations. Cedar Ridge existed to launder stolen wealth through legitimate-appearing businesses. Ruth's most trusted contact finally delivered the message Lucinda desperately needed. A territorial marshal named William Crawford was investigating corruption complaints from neighboring counties. His jurisdiction included Cedar Ridge, but local authorities had convinced him that no problems existed in their peaceful community. The challenge was reaching Crawford before the conspiracy eliminated all evidence of their crimes. Jonas remained trapped in the abandoned mine, facing execution disguised as lawful arrest. The homesteaders were already receiving final eviction notices. Time was measured in hours rather than days. Lucinda's plan required perfect timing and absolute trust in people she barely knew. Ruth's network would have to coordinate messages across multiple territories without alerting Sheriff Vaughn's surveillance operation. The slightest mistake would doom everyone involved. The revelation that changed everything came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Kellerman's casual comment about Morrison's first wife revealed a detail that shattered Lucinda's understanding of the conspiracy's scope. The previous Mrs. Morrison had died in a riding accident shortly after discovering irregularities in her husband's business records. Morrison had killed before to protect his secrets. The mail-order bride arrangement was not his first attempt to control a potential witness through marriage. Lucinda was following a pattern that had already claimed at least one life. Her analytical abilities focused on this new information with laser intensity. How many other convenient accidents had eliminated threats to the conspiracy? How many missing homesteaders had actually died rather than relocated? How many federal investigators had met with fatal misfortune on mountain roads? The scope of the criminal enterprise extended far beyond land fraud, into systematic murder, spanning decades. The three conspirators had built their wealth on a foundation of corpses, Anyone who threatened their operation faced death, disguised as accident or lawful execution. But this revelation also provided the key to their destruction. Murder was a federal crime that brought automatic territorial oversight. Evidence of systematic killing would override local authority and bring immediate federal intervention. The conspiracy's greatest strength could become its ultimate weakness. Ruth's network delivered the crucial intelligence that made Lucinda's plan possible. Jonas was still alive in the abandoned mine, but Sheriff Vaughn planned his execution for dawn on the wedding day. The timing would eliminate the Pinkerton agent, while all attention focused on the ceremony. The territorial marshal Crawford was indeed investigating corruption complaints, but he had been misdirected to examine problems in counties far from Cedar Ridge. His investigation schedule would not bring him to Morrison's territory for several weeks. By then, all evidence would be destroyed and witnesses eliminated. Lucinda's response required the kind of calculated risk that had kept her alive in Baltimore's most dangerous situations. She sent Ruth with a message that would either save Jonas or doom them all. The territorial marshal needed immediate notification about federal crimes in progress. The message contained specific details about murder, fraud, and conspiracy that only a Pinkerton agent could have discovered. Crawford would recognize the professional quality of the intelligence and understand its implications. He would also realize that delay meant the deaths of federal witnesses and the destruction of criminal evidence. Morrison spent the evening before his wedding celebrating with Blackwood and Vaughn. Their conversation, overheard through Ruth's careful positioning, revealed the final pieces of Lucinda's investigation. Jonas was not simply investigating land fraud. He was the son of the first man Morrison's father had murdered for his mining claims. The Pinkerton agent's entire investigation was driven by personal vengeance as well as professional duty. His father's death 30 years earlier had been disguised as a mining accident. Jonas had spent his adult life gathering evidence to prove the murder and reclaim his stolen inheritance. The conspiracy had murdered Jonas's father, stolen his claims, and built their empire on his discovery. Now they planned to complete the circle by executing the son who threatened their criminal legacy. Lucinda understood that her wedding day would determine the fate of everyone she had come to care about in Cedar Ridge. Jonas would live or die based on her ability to expose the conspiracy. The homesteaders would keep their land, or lose everything to murderous thieves. Her own survival depended on transforming apparent powerlessness into devastating strength. Dawn broke over Cedar Ridge with the clarity that follows violent storms. The church bells rang across the territory, summoning witnesses to what everyone believed would be a simple frontier wedding. Lucinda stood before her mirror, adjusting the borrowed dress that would either celebrate her marriage or serve as her funeral shroud. The church filled with territorial officials, business leaders, and curious townspeople drawn by the promise of social spectacle. Morrison greeted his guests with the confidence of a man whose plans had proceeded without complication. Sheriff Vaughn positioned his deputies strategically throughout the building, ostensibly for security, but actually for control. Garrett Blackwood arrived with surveying documents that would be filed immediately after the ceremony. The homesteader evictions would begin within hours of Morrison gaining legal authority over his wife's potential testimony. The conspiracy's timeline demanded swift action once their final obstacle was eliminated. Ruth's network had worked through the night with desperate efficiency. Messages spread through channels that avoided official communication systems. Women carried word between households, while men focused on wedding preparations. The seamstress's quiet allies understood that everything depended on perfect coordination. The ceremony began with traditional readings and hymns. Morrison's satisfaction was evident as he watched his bride approach the altar with apparent submission. Lucinda's downcast eyes and quiet demeanor convinced everyone that she had accepted her fate as a powerless frontier wife. But her analytical mind catalogued every face in the congregation, identifying allies and enemies with precision. The homesteaders sat together near the back, their worried expressions revealing awareness that this wedding threatened their survival. The territorial officials occupied prominent positions, displaying their importance to Cedar Ridge's business community. The minister's words about love and partnership rang hollow in the charged atmosphere. Everyone present understood that this ceremony was about power rather than affection. Morrison's vows carried the tone of ownership rather than commitment. Lucinda's responses were barely audible whispers of compliance. The moment arrived when the minister asked for objections to the union. Traditional silence settled over the congregation as everyone prepared for the final pronouncements. Morrison's smile revealed his certainty that no one would dare challenge his authority in front of such distinguished witnesses. Lucinda's voice shattered the expected quiet, like glass breaking in an empty room. She had objections to this marriage based on her intended husband's criminal activities and murderous history. Her words carried across the shocked silence with analytical precision and devastating clarity. The congregation erupted in confused murmurs as Morrison demanded she cease her hysterical behavior immediately. Sheriff Vaughn stepped forward to restore order, but Lucinda continued speaking with calm authority that commanded attention from every person present. She detailed the land fraud conspiracy with specific dates, locations, and methods. Her accusations named Morrison, Vaughn, and Blackwood as the leaders of criminal enterprise spanning multiple decades. The Homesteader murders were described with evidence that only careful investigation could have uncovered. Morrison's fury transformed his composed facade into something approaching panic. He ordered the sheriff to arrest his bride for public slander and disturbing the peace. His demands for immediate action revealed the desperation behind his careful planning. But Lucinda's revelations had already achieved their intended effect. Territorial Marshal William Crawford stepped forward from his position among the distinguished guests. Ruth's message had reached him in time to attend this ceremony as an official witness to federal crimes. Crawford's authority superseded local law enforcement immediately. His jurisdiction covered territorial corruption and federal murder charges. Sheriff Vaughn's protests about jurisdictional boundaries carried no weight against federal mandate and criminal evidence. The marshal's questions drew out additional details that confirmed Lucinda's accusations with official precision. Morrison's attempts to discredit his bride's testimony failed when Crawford recognized the professional quality of her intelligence gathering. This was not hysterical accusation, but careful documentation of criminal conspiracy. Blackwood's attempt to destroy the surveying documents was stopped by alert homesteaders who had positioned themselves strategically throughout the church. The mining magnate's panic revealed the importance of evidence he sought to eliminate. His guilt was written across his desperate actions. Jonas Carver entered the church under federal protection, his survival confirming Lucinda's claims about attempted murder. The Pinkerton agent's testimony provided professional validation of every accusation against the conspiracy. His father's stolen mining claims were documented in records the criminals had thought safely hidden. The revelation of Jonas's inheritance transformed the entire territorial power structure in minutes rather than years. His legitimate ownership of the massive mining claims gave him authority that exceeded any of the conspirators' fraudulent holdings. Justice and economics aligned to restore stolen wealth to its rightful heir. Morrison's desperate attempt to claim marital authority over Lucinda's testimony collapsed when Crawford declared the ceremony invalid due to criminal fraud. No legal marriage could proceed when one party faced federal charges for conspiracy and murder. Her evidence remained admissible and devastating. The arrests proceeded with efficient federal authority. Morrison, Vaughn, and Blackwood were taken into custody on charges of murder, conspiracy, and territorial fraud. Their empire of stolen wealth crumbled as quickly as territorial authority could seize fraudulent assets and restore legitimate ownership. 6 months later, Cedar Ridge had transformed into the community its honest residents had always hoped to build. Lucinda's mediation business thrived as people sought her analytical abilities to resolve disputes fairly and efficiently. Her reputation for reading truth beneath surface deceptions made her services invaluable throughout the territory. Jonas developed his restored mining claims with ethical practices that benefited the entire community. His wealth created opportunities for displaced homesteaders while establishing schools and infrastructure that honest territorial development required. Their partnership had evolved from desperate alliance into genuine collaboration. Ruth's boarding house welcomed women seeking fresh starts in a territory where merit mattered more than background. Her network of quiet allies had become an official support system for anyone facing injustice or intimidation. The seamstress's courage had helped transform Cedar Ridge's social structure. The church that had witnessed attempted criminal ceremony now hosted the community meetings where honest territorial development was planned and implemented. Justice had replaced corruption through the courage of people who refused to accept that power must always triumph over truth.